We've reached that point in the summer where basketball has ended, hockey is over, so there's not as much going on live TV. Or is there? We'll talk about what's happening around the Bay Area with our professional sports, still some awesome newsworthy items, and always some great places to experience and celebrate your Bay Area sports fandom here on Silicon Sports Spectator. Cue the music. Welcome to Silicon Sports Spectator. I am your host, the man known as the Joe Machine. Someday I'll tell you that story. It's not very exciting, but I'll keep you in suspense or how that nickname came about. But the real reason you turned in is because you're a Bay Area sports fan and you want to know what's going on with the teams and the activities and the experiences that you as fan members want to see and do in our lovely area of California. We're in late June now, and I feel like the rest of the country is complaining about heat waves, and we're still in the kind of mild heat here, so it's really not too bad at all. 70s, 80s, no humidity. I suppose this is why we like living in California. But even as some of the professional sports leagues wind down, basketball crown a champion. Last week we had the NHL crown its champion. So there's less and less things for us to watch around here. Or we simply double down on those teams that do remain, especially baseball, soccer. But let's start with a great hockey story here in the Bay Area. Some cool news out of Sharks camp is, first of all, we have a Hall of Famer in our organization. And of course, you all know and love this one. So I'm happy to say it's S.J. Sharkey. Yes, S.J. Sharkey had just got nominated into the Mascot Hall of Fame. No, the real news here is that we are celebrating the Hall of Fame entry of Joe Thornton, former captain of the Sharks, lone Hart Trophy winning center for the organization, who, as soon as he came into our organization through a trade with Boston years ago, having an instant impact with us. In fact, that was the year that he won MVP, the only MVP in NHL history to ever be traded in the season that they win the trophy. So how cool is it now that we have to say that Joe Thornton, who had the bulk of his career with us in the Sharks organization, is now officially a Hall of Famer. There's a cool video of Joe getting a call from fellow Hall of Famers, Ron Francis, Lanny McDonald, and just had this great classic Joe Thornton reaction. It's worth looking up. My memories of Joe Thornton, of course, was as soon as he came, the Sharks were kind of this borderline competitive team. We're trying to make some moves, but that instantly put us into, hey, we're among the top teams in the league now. A consistent threat, if you will, to win a championship. Joe took us to that next level. Obviously, we did not win a cup during that tenure, came awfully close a couple times. I think of the impact that Joe had, again, in those years where not always the goal scoring type. In fact, it was always frustrating to some extent watching him play because you wanted him to shoot more. He actually was a great shooter, but he's really known for his playmaking. It was very high up on the scoring list in terms of total points, especially in assists. But Joe has also become this great ambassador for the league, for the sport of hockey. Particularly with Bay Area hockey, though, too. I consistently see him at events. He doesn't even have an official role on the team or in the organization, but he's always around helping the young players. What does Mike Greer, our GM, call him? The commissioner of good vibes, the perfect Joe Thornton role. And, he's just very dedicated to this organization, to Bay Area hockey. Yeah, what more can we celebrate? I'm very honored that he gets to represent the Sharks. We do have other Sharks players in the Hockey Hall of Fame, but they're mostly guys that have had their careers with other organizations and they just had a stopover here. For instance, Teemu Selanne, Ed Belfour, Rob Blake. These are all guys, great years with the Sharks. Maybe not Ed Belfour, that's a different story. But they're guys that we identify them more so with other teams. That's fine. But I think Joe Thornton is one, even though he was not drafted originally by the Sharks, where the majority of his career is with our organization. And as such, I think he's primarily identified as the San Jose Sharks. People, of course, remember him being drafted by Boston, him having very good years with Boston. He had these late career stints, a cup of coffee with the Florida Panthers. In a year they went to the finals, did not win it, though I don't know if he was even playing. He might have been injured at that time. Would have been nice for him to get onto the cup there. He also did a stint in Toronto, his hometown team. But alas, it's always his San Jose Sharks tenure that is most fondly remembered, especially, of course, by us local fans. What I appreciate about Joe Thornton, too, is this magnetic personality that he has, and just, he's a kid at heart. He's goofy. He's one of a kind. And like I say, he's a great ambassador for the sport and for our local team. I hope that we continue to keep him around in some capacity. I love seeing him at Barracuda games, at different Shark events all throughout town. Last year I saw him at the draft. In fact, I was on the same flight as him coming home from the Las Vegas draft, and that was kind of a neat experience. I wanted to chat hockey with him the whole time, but just kind of gave a respectful hello. I don't think he would have minded at all. So Joe, you're one of a kind. Congratulations. Very proud to have you represent the Sharks in this call up to the Hall of Fame. Hopefully we'll see in the coming years Patrick Marleau, who's eligible for Hall of Fame voting, not enough to get, I think it's actually his third year of eligibility, has not gotten in yet. Hopefully that's coming, though. And I did mention that San Jose Sharky has also gotten in. That Mascot Hall of Fame is separate, of course, from the NHL. And, it's sort of a silly thing, but I mean, how fun is it just to say, that's a good, engaging mascot? Hasn't really changed in 30 years, but I don't know that he's needed to. Maybe he lost his tail. Do you remember that? When he first came out and debuted, Sharky had a tail. I bet too many kids were like pulling on it or whatever, or just maybe it was awkward to walk with. All right, but that's not the only Sharks news around here. Another longtime veteran of the Sharks is waived by the team. Mark Edward Vlasic, the man we called Pickles, has been released by the Sharks. But we know that Mark Edward is kind of wrapping up his career here. He's spent his entire career with the Sharks organization. I think had maybe just 1 or 2 years left on his deal. It was a relatively large contract, but it's not a worry at all. The Sharks are in very healthy cap space right now. This is more about a roster move more than anything. Just an opportunity to open up a defenseman spot. Mark Edward Vlasic, most famous for being a shutdown defenseman for the Sharks. He has an NHL record all-time for the most block shots by any player. Over 2,000 block shots. That's across 1,300 games, all with the San Jose Sharks organization. Played with us since he was an 18-year-old kid. I used to joke around that when watching Vlasic play, he would be the greatest defenseman in the history of the game if he only could shoot the puck on net. It just was not... Offensive was just not his strong suit. And it really wasn't what he was called to do. But, again, if he had a better shot or whatever like that, because he was always in the right place at the right time, did so many things so well defensively, and, being on these great power plays and line pairings with great Sharks like Thornton, and all that, if he could have capitalized on some more offense, that was all that really was missing from his game. But I don't want to focus on, the negative. He was a great contributor. Never really got a lot of nods for the Norris Trophy as the top defenseman or anything. I think that is maybe still too biased for offensive. And we know this well as Sharks fans because who has won it in our organization? We've had Erik Karlsson and Brent Burns both win the Norris Trophy in the past, neither of whom were great defensive defensemen, but rather they always had great offensive output as defensemen. That seemed to be much more favorable in the Norris Trophy voting. But if we were looking at just pure shutdown defensemen, Vlasic is a key contributor even last year as a veteran on the team. Only got to play 25 games or whatever it was, but still contributing great minutes. He was probably still our best defensive defenseman on the team last year. He's going to be missed. A longtime part of the organization. I wish him well. Lastly, a couple other notes just around the league. Of course, we have tomorrow, Friday the 27th, opens up the draft. So really excited to see where the Sharks go. Most people are suggesting that we're going to be getting the star forward and with the second overall pick, Michael Misa. We'll see if that comes to fruition. It's assuming that Matthew Schaefer, as the defenseman, is the consensus #1 overall pick, is going to go to the New York Islanders. That's probably going to be true. If not, for whatever reason, if they go another direction, I think the Sharks would very quickly pick up Schaefer in a heartbeat. And while Greer has talked about or alluded to the fact that maybe he's taken calls or would consider trading the second pick, I don't think. Excuse me. I don't think that's going to happen. Too much upside with Misa. But do we go in another direction? There's been some other names floating around, as well as maybe some guys that have impressed during the combine or in their meetings with the Sharks organization leading up to the draft. But I think Misa is the way to go. The last news today, it didn't get as much. One more item just around the league, of course, was today that they agreed on a new collective bargaining agreement. And some interesting highlights from this. Probably the most notable one is that the NHL and the Players Association in the NHL have agreed to a 84-game season. So that's 2 additional games in the regular season. They're going to cut out 2 preseason games. I'm a little surprised by this move, but the NHL does seem to be in a good growth state right now, and I can never turn down watching a good hockey game. There were some other business details about salary cap changes. I won't go into details about that, but I think all good signs of growth here. I never take for granted the CBA agreements. That this one seemed to be kind of agreed upon relatively simply. Who knows what was happening in back rooms and so forth, but there was never a threat of a strike or a lockout or anything like that, which the NHL, of course, has had in the past. So thankfully that was not the case. Also, on a positive note too, is that the NHL seems to be looking at expanding its All-Star game, or rather not the All-Star game, but the international tournament. What was it? The Four Nations last year. Looks like they're hoping to expand that to up to 8 countries in the past. So it'd be nice to see that tournament grow. It certainly was very popular. The players liked it. It was great for viewership, and I bet we can get a lot more exciting teams and players involved now that we're expanding to additional countries. We'll love to see like the Russians or the Swiss or the Czech teams. Love to see all those different nations represented on the ice. But that's not the only draft that's going on. We also switch over to basketball, where we just had the NBA draft. In fact, we're in the middle of it. Just the first round happened yesterday. No surprises that Cooper Flagg from Duke was taken overall #1 by the Dallas Mavericks. To be honest, because I don't watch a lot of college basketball, there weren't a lot of names that I knew very well. But always it was a good broadcast just to get to know some of these names and their backgrounds. One name that did catch my eye, of course, ended up getting drafted 25th by the Orlando Magic, is Jace Richardson. Warriors fans will know Jace as the son of former Warriors All-Star Jason Richardson. Jace gets drafted by the up-and-coming Orlando Magic. I think it's going to be a pretty solid team, and I don't know a lot about Jace's game. I've heard he is a Bay Area kid, though, as well, so went to Berkeley High, and just there's been some chatter about him in our local Warriors circles, as knowing that he is son of a former player and all that. So congratulations to Jace and the Richardson family. Big news there. The Warriors did not have a first-round pick in this year's draft. Their first-round pick from this year was given to the Miami Heat as part of the Jimmy Butler trade from last season. But we'll see what happens today with their second-round pick. The Warriors have done really well in the second round, especially in recent years. We, of course, remember Draymond Green as a second-round pick, Brandon Pajemski as another second-round pick. So we'll see if we can find another diamond in the rough. As for the Valkyries, some big wins for the Valkyries, though last night they just had a loss but a couple big wins this past week, beating Caitlin Clark and the Indiana Fever when they came to town. That was an impressive game. Caitlin Clark was shut down by the Valkyries. Did not hit any three-pointers, despite having, I think she was 0 for 7 on three-pointers. Had a good game, though, but it was great that the Valkyries ended up with a really impressive victory, beating Indiana in that one. Noteworthy also in that Fever game is that one of our recent signings, Chloe Bibby from Australia, made her WNBA debut, and what a debut it was. She's been a great contributor to our team, kind of this post-up center, but also who has a three-point threat. So she's been absolutely great on both ends of the floor for the Valkyries. I think she's definitely earned a longer stay here within and adding to that international mix of players that we have on the Valkyries. So congratulations, Chloe. Letitia Ami here, who also had an excellent game in the Fever, continues to impress us. Again, her story was that she was waived by the team at the beginning of the season, but then brought back when we had the need. I think that she's consistently proven that she is an important part of this club. So I think that she's going to stay on here too. Later this past weekend, and also this past Sunday, the Valkyries played the Connecticut Sun, and this was a game that the Valkyries dominated. I think their biggest lead was over 30 points at one point. Caitlin Chen made her season debut, got some good minutes in there, which was nice to see. And then just yesterday, we had a really tight game against the New York Liberty. Ended up being a loss for the Valkyries. We're hanging with some of the top teams in the league. I tell you, I'm really liking where the Valkyries continue to impress, and I'm liking where we are at the team. Certainly on the defensive end of the ball, I think we're great. One last note on the Valkyries, of course, is right now too, is a couple of our players have been playing overseas in Eurobasket tournaments, and among them is Janelle Salon and Ilya Rupert playing for Team France. In fact, they're the top seed in that thing and continue to, they're into the semifinal round right now. They're going to be playing the Spanish ladies, and we'll see if they make it into the finals. But right now they seem to be the favorites, and Janelle Salon is killing it lately. Love it. Even though the Valkyries have been on this really good run lately, one of our star players has been playing overseas. In fact, several of our players, but her in particular. It'd be great when she does come back, but at the same time, we're certainly rooting for her as she continues to represent us well across the pond. Switching over to soccer, there's a couple of notes here. Bay FC had a loss to Gotham FC, and the Earthquake with an impressive win yesterday over Dallas. Next up for the Earthquakes is they play the California Classico. That'll be at Stanford Stadium. They've already sold 40,000 tickets for this big event. That's coming up on Saturday. One kind of disappointing note out of MLS is that MLS just announced their All-Star squad. The way that they do their All-Star format is that they have a single team, about 20 individuals. It's a combination of both fan votes as well as coaches and fellow players, I believe, all contribute votes as well. And surprisingly, no San Jose Earthquakes were selected for that match. A little disappointing. I think that maybe gives us a little not as many players are selected compared to other leagues. But it is kind of surprising to think, like, do we really not have one of the top 20 players in the league? So disappointing, especially, for a team especially for our squad this year that has performed so well, especially on the offensive side. I'm surprised Chicho Arango or Joseph Martinez didn't get a nod there. Finally, some baseball notes. Giants finished a series against Boston, taking 2 out of 3 against Boston. Devers had his first home run as a Giant against his former club. That was pretty cool, especially that was an important one in a very tight 3-2 game. And the Giants are now in a series against the Miami Marlins here at home. I won't go in too much depth today, but I will just say that in terms of baseball, I will be lining up a couple interviews in the coming weeks. We're kind of getting to a midpoint in the baseball season, if you can believe that already. So I think as that approaches, I'll try to get another interview. I won't go into any spoilers about who that might be because I still have yet to finalize it. But expect maybe some extended episodes and additional coverage on some of the exciting things going around the baseball world. One thing that did, of course, catch my attention this past week in baseball was the former Oakland A's did their groundbreaking ceremony in Las Vegas. Of course, the reviled owner, John Fisher, was there for this alongside him, different members of the media and from the former players. Dave Stewart, Raleigh Fingers, Dallas Braden were all on site there for that. That whole situation still continues to be shrouded in mystery. They seem confident, at least they put on these airs that even with this groundbreaking, that they're still looking at opening day 2028. That new ballpark in Las Vegas is going to be open. And it's not to say that it's impossible, but there certainly seems like there's more questions right now. Not the least of which is who is and how they're going to pay for it. Right now, they do not have enough money for this park. I'm confident the money will show, but the longer that you wait, the more the price tag goes up for this. I try not to look at it with biased eyes, but if I remove all emotion from it, I really still just have so many more questions and doubts, frankly, about the process, or at least the timing. One last baseball note, the Oakland Ballers from the Pioneer Baseball League, the only professional baseball team left in Oakland, had an exciting milestone this week, and that is they have qualified for the playoffs. Last week we talked about the San Jose Giants and how they do it, where at the halfway point of their season, they take the top 2 teams at the halfway point of the season, qualify for their playoffs. Similar in the Pioneer Baseball League, where again the top 2 teams in the league, qualify for the playoffs in September. The Oakland Ballers are the top-ranked team in Pioneer Baseball as we speak. And at the halfway point, they qualify for one of those playoff spots. So we will definitely see them later in the year. Congratulations to them. Excited to have some playoff baseball back in Oakland. Wraps up just my news coverage for the week. In our next episode, I think we'll have a lot more coverage about both the NBA and NHL drafts. Certainly going to be tuning into those. I did also want to share quickly that I had another great experience watching sports, grabbing a good meal at First Street Ale House in downtown Livermore. A great spot to go. Highly recommend it. First Street Ale House is just kind of the old traditional pub that never disappoints. It's one of my frequent spots. Love seeing and catching up with friends. They're great for watching. They tend to actually have a lot of international sports being telecast there, but so if you're in the area, check them out on old favorite First Street Ale House. On that note, I'm going to wrap up this week. We'll see you next time. Subscribe to the channel. Leave a comment. All those things help out. For all your fellow Silicon sports spectators, I'm Joe. Thanks for tuning in. Music!